So I'd like to transition to talk about the Friends of the Montauk Library. What year was the Friends of the Montauk Library formed, and what were your motivations behind founding the group?
I met Suzanne Gosman in the parking lot behind White's, waiting for the bookmobile on a rainy, cold winter day. And we became friends, and we commiserated about the fact that we didn't have a proper library. We were happy to go to East Hampton, but it was a trek. And we just thought the community deserved it, and our children deserved it. It was really, as Suzanne once so wisely said, for the love of our children and the things that are available to them, we want to start a library. So in our minds was starting a library. So we called SCLIS, Suffolk Cooperative Library System, and talked with Annette Bassett, who was director then, in 1978, 79, 80. I'm not sure what the year was we talked to Annette, but it was about a year before we were really underway. And she said, come in and meet me. And she had us figured out immediately. She said, you need to start a Friends of the Montauk Library. You don't have one yet, but nothing will prevent you from forming a 501c3 and beginning to raise funds and raise awareness. And here's how you're going to do it. So she gave us all the forms, and it just, fired us. We just sparked, everything and just sort of just spoke out from that meeting. So it came home, we wrote the bylaws, applied for 501c3, and established a mission. And there was a bunch of friends. We all had play groups for the babies, right? So other people joined us. But Suzanne and I pretty much, in partnership, I know I'm credited with starting the Friends. That was absolutely a partnership and then a cooperative effort with many, many folks working on it. I appreciate being credited, but it's really not quite accurate. So we were granted a provisional, and in 83 we got, I thought it took 5 years, but in 83 we got our certificate. But way before we got the certificate, even before we submitted the bylaws, we began planning and thought, oh my God, we have all these wonderful women in town who knit and sew and create. Let's build a quilt. Let's build a picture quilt. So that was one of our very first efforts. We pulled together this wonderful group of intergenerational ladies, from Winnie Gilmartin to Sue Kelly, a young mother. Sybil Tuma was, Charlotte Shore, Ada Gigante, just a wonderful host of women. And we organized meetings and got quilt material and decided how big, and people decided on what they wanted to represent in their picture quilt. And we got to work. And within a year, within months, amazingly, we were auctioning it off. I think maybe in 81 of November at the Lions Fair is where we auctioned it. So maybe it was a year. We showed it a long time and sold raffle tickets a long time. We didn't rush, we wanted to earn enough money through the raffle to justify giving up this precious piece of our lives. So the quilt frame was set up in my living room, and the ladies would come 2, 3 at a time and quilt any day of the week. And it was just wonderful. We also started a pancake breakfast, and I think that was our first fundraiser. John Likey at the fire department said, sure, come on in. I'll help you do a pancake breakfast. He got John's to bake, make the pancakes, John's Pancake House, and volunteers from the fire department. And it was a resounding success. I think we sold raffle tickets, certainly to the quilt, and other things. We would, as every organization does, gather things to raffle off. But it was also a public event where the community came together and we spoke about why we're holding this breakfast and what we plan to do. And that kind of grassroots effort was what helped to raise awareness throughout the town. Every manner of family. Every time we did programming, we introduced it with who we were, what we were doing, and what the purpose was. So all of those Easter egg hunts and movies and book discussions and poetry contests, everything was prefaced with an understanding that we communicated about why we were doing this. So it just took off. The community absolutely was just thrilled with the idea that this might happen. And before long, we were given the manse at the church for $1 a year, given books from Skliss, and my mother-in-law was a Friends of the Library in Greenlawn. She gave us boxes and boxes of books. And we opened the manse in November of that first year. So that was, it really all came together in 1980, was when we were officially formed. But we'd been thinking about it for a couple of years before. And coincidentally, and coinciding, Minnie Proctor, a speech teacher at the public school, had been, building the idea, quietly to herself. Bill DePoli, clerk in the hardware store at Becker's. Also, we have to have a library, beginning to, do his research. John Keeshan, same thing, politically connected and, part of the house buying and house renting community, was working on starting a library. And little by little, we found each other, and those folks were the original trustees of the library. And Suzanne and all of our compatriots were trustees of the Friends of the Library. And we worked together really well, we helped with research on the library or whatever needed doing. Lynn Holmes from the Presbyterian Church, pastor's wife, joined. Audrey Grimes joined. I hope I'm not forgetting Bobby Borth, teacher at the public school, joined the effort. So it was it was an idea whose time had come, and people were so grateful that there would be not only a place to go and borrow books, but a place to meet and have programming, I mean, they saw from the things we were doing without a building, we met everywhere, Firehouse and both the schools and the churches and wherever we could meet, the Green, Kirk Park. We found, we used Third House, the outdoors of Third House, and, so it just was something that gained momentum.